A woman sits alone in a crowded cafe, stirring her coffee in slow circles, watching as laughter and conversation fill the space around her. She used to be part of something, part of a group, part of a friendship, part of a world where she belonged. But now it feels like she's invisible. No texts, no calls, no one checking in. It's as if she doesn't exist beyond the spaces she quietly occupies. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when she had friends, people she trusted, people she thought would always be there. But somewhere along the way, life changed. Maybe it was the growing distance, the unreturned messages, or the silent expectations that friendships would maintain themselves. Maybe it was the way she started feeling like an outsider in her own circle. Little by little, the invitations stopped. The conversations became shorter, and soon she found herself alone. At first, she told herself it was just a phase, that people got busy, that things would go back to the way they were. But as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the silence became louder. She started questioning everything. Was it something she said? Something she did? Was she not enough? The loneliness wasn't just about being alone. It was about feeling forgotten, as if she had somehow become replaceable in a world that once made space for her. But here's the thing about loneliness. It has a way of either breaking you or transforming you. Sitting in that cafe, surrounded by the sound of a world she no longer felt part of, she had a choice to make. She could continue waiting, hoping for someone to notice her absence, or she could step into the unknown and redefine what connection truly meant. And that's when she realized maybe this was not the end of her story, but the beginning of something she had never considered before. Maybe the loss of others was an invitation to find herself, to build something stronger, to become someone who no longer depended on the presence of others to feel whole. But how does someone rebuild when they feel completely alone? How do you find your way back when the path seems so unfamiliar? What she does next will change everything. She walked out of the cafe, the cold air hitting her face, making her feel awake in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. The streets were busy, filled with people moving with purpose, laughing, talking, existing in a way she once did. She used to be part of this flow, but now she felt like she was moving against it, like she was out of sync with the rest of the world. As she walked, memories came back of late-night talks with friends, of making plans that felt like they would last forever. But forever didn't happen. People moved on, drifted away. And she had let them, hadn't she? Maybe she didn't try hard enough to hold on. Or maybe they just didn't need her the way she needed them. She reached a park and sat on a bench, watching as families played. Friends sat in groups, sharing stories, smiling. It was strange how the world kept moving while she felt stuck. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through old conversations, the ones that used to be filled with excitement, plans, inside jokes. Now most of them ended the same way, with her message being the last one, unanswered. She thought about reaching out again, about trying one more time. But what if they had already moved on? What if they didn't even think about her anymore? The fear of rejection was worse than the silence. So she put her phone away and looked at the world around her, wondering how people made it look so easy. Maybe she had spent too much time looking back. Maybe she had been so focused on the people who left that she hadn't noticed the ones who were still there. The kind neighbor who always smiled at her, the coworker who asked how her day was, the barista who remembered her order. They weren't close friends, but they were connections, weren't they? Maybe friendship wasn't always about having a group, about fitting into a perfect circle. Maybe it was about moments, about small, unexpected bonds that she had been overlooking all along. But even as she thought this, the loneliness lingered. The feeling that something was missing, that she was meant to be part of something more, wouldn't go away. She didn't just want to exist in the background of other people's lives. She wanted to belong. She wanted to matter. And she wasn't sure how to find her way back to that. That night, she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind restless. The silence in her apartment felt heavier than usual, pressing against her like a weight she couldn't shake off. She thought about sending a message, just one, to an old friend. Something casual, something that wouldn't seem desperate. But as she opened the chat, her fingers hesitated over the keyboard. The last message was hers, unanswered, months ago. She put her phone down, feeling foolish. How many times had she replayed the past, searching for where things went wrong? She wanted to believe it wasn't her fault, that friendships sometimes faded for reasons no one could control. But deep down, a small voice whispered, asterisk, maybe it was you. Asterisk, maybe she had been too quiet, too distant. Maybe she hadn't tried hard enough. Or maybe she had tried too hard, and they had grown tired of her. Days passed, each one blending into the next. She went to work, exchanged polite words with coworkers, smiled when she had to. But everything felt hollow. She kept watching from the sidelines, seeing the way people connected so easily, how they fit into each other's lives without effort. She envied that. She missed belonging. One afternoon, as she sat alone on a park bench again, she heard laughter nearby. A group of women, probably in their late 20s like her, were sitting together on a picnic blanket, sharing food, swapping stories. They were comfortable with each other, the kind of friendship she used to have. As she watched them, something inside her twisted. It wasn't just sadness, it was frustration. Why was it so hard to make friends as an adult? Why did it feel impossible to start over? It wasn't like she hadn't tried. She had joined a gym, signed up for an art class, even attended a social event once. But no matter what she did, she always felt like an outsider. Like everyone already had their people, and there was no room for her. Then something unexpected happened. One of the women from the group caught her gaze and smiled. It was small, simple, but it felt like a lifeline. For a moment, she considered looking away, pretending she hadn't noticed. But instead, she did something she hadn't done in a long time. She smiled back. It was just a moment, nothing more. But it left her wondering, could something as small as that be the beginning of something new? Or was she just setting herself up for disappointment again? That moment stayed with her longer than she expected. It was just a smile, a fleeting exchange, but it had stirred something deep inside her, a hope she hadn't felt in a long time. She thought about it all the way home, replaying it in her mind like a scene from a movie. Maybe this was how it started. Maybe small moments like these were what led to real connections. The next afternoon, she found herself back at the park, this time with a book in hand. She wasn't sure if she was hoping to see them again, or just trying to convince herself that she wasn't afraid to be there. But as she settled onto the bench, she saw the same group of women in the distance, laughing, talking, existing in that effortless way. And then, as if it had been planned, the same woman from before turned and caught her gaze. This time, the smile wasn't just an accident. It was intentional. "Hey," the woman called out, waving casually. "You come here a lot." She hesitated. Her instinct was to say no, to downplay it, to avoid seeming like she had been waiting for this. But instead, she forced herself to nod. "Yeah, sometimes." The woman patted the empty space on the blanket beside her. "Come sit with us." For a moment, she froze. She had wanted this, hadn't she? A chance, an opening. But now that it was here, she felt the weight of every past rejection, every moment of loneliness pressing down on her. What if she sat down and they realized she didn't belong? What if this was another temporary connection that would eventually fade? Still, something inside her told her to move. So she did. The conversation started light. Names, small talk, a few shared laughs. It felt good, almost natural. But then, just when she started to feel like maybe this could be something real, the twist she never saw coming happened. One of the women mentioned a name from her past. A name she hadn't heard in years. You used to be friends with her, right? Her heart dropped. The past she had been trying so hard to move on from had just caught up with her. She forced a smile, but inside she was unraveling. Because what they didn't know was that this person, wasn't just someone from her past. They were the reason she had no friends in the first place. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she kept her expression neutral. She hadn't heard that name in so long, yet it still had the power to shake her. She forced herself to breathe, to not let the past creep in and take over. "Yeah," she said carefully, not sure where this was going. "We used to be close." The woman who had invited her in nodded, glancing at the others. "She actually used to hang out with us too. Before everything." Before everything. She swallowed hard. They didn't know, at least, not the full story. And for a moment, she debated whether she should tell them, whether she should finally say the words she had kept locked inside for so long. The past had been messy. It wasn't just that her friendships had faded. They had been taken from her, twisted, manipulated by someone she had once trusted completely. A person who had turned people against her with quiet whispers and well-placed lies. One by one, her friends had drifted away, until there was no one left. And the worst part, she had never even been given a chance to defend herself. She could still remember the moment she realized it was over, that she had lost everyone. The way they had looked at her differently, the way the messages had stopped coming. She had never understood why it happened, what she had done to deserve it. All she knew was that she had spent years carrying the weight of that betrayal, never getting closure, never knowing if the people she once loved. She felt something shift inside her, a weight she had carried for years beginning to lift. They didn't know the full truth, but at least now they were questioning it. That was more than she had ever hoped for. One of them offered a small smile. "Maybe it's time we hear your side." For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel invisible. She wasn't just a woman with no friends. She was someone finding her way back, step by step. As she spoke, she realized something. Sometimes, the past doesn't define you. What you choose to do next does not had ever questioned if they had been wrong. And now, sitting here with these new people, she had a choice. She could walk away, let history repeat itself, let the past define her. Or she could finally take back control. She looked up, meeting their eyes. "I never really knew what happened," she admitted, her voice steady but vulnerable. "One day, everything changed, and no one told me why." The air around them shifted. There was a pause, a long, heavy pause, before one of them spoke.